It's kind of scary when you realize how much damages can be brought to the world by one single person. This guy pulled a massive trick on so many people, and the financial damages are in the billions with a B from one person's behavior. Think of how scary that is.
Spencer, Cornelia, welcome to the show.
I love to be here right now. This is an interesting moment, and I am super excited for this conversation.
Yes, I feel like it would have been nice for our first conversation to have been under less insane situation. But yeah, man, it's a very, very important time. Has it ever been this crazy, do you think, in the finance space?
Never. But this is what leads to the most enjoyable conversations, right?
Yeah.
If nothing's going on, there's nothing to talk about.
Well, I think the internet's completely awash with conversations about the downfall of FTX, which was a crypto trading platform, and Sam Bankman-Fried, who was the owner and CEO, and where he is and what he's doing and stuff. I don't think that we need to do a huge postmortem on that. I think that's already kind of been done by people. What I'm interested in is having a conversation about the ethics of the influencers that was promoting that platform, and then also what this means for moving forward the effective altruism movement, which Sam Bankman-Fried was hugely influential and involved in. He was the single biggest donor toward that. And then kind of some speculation about what he and the crypto world might do next, because those are the most interesting things, I think. But we do need to start with some kind of a primer. So if somebody has been underground for the last 5 days, week or so, how would you explain what has happened in the crypto world over the last week?
Someone who went on a trip to Europe might have completely missed the entire story. Think how crazy, that's how fast it was. So essentially there was a tweet that really kicked off a bank run. Essentially there was a tweet by a competitor that was signifying that there might be issues at their number one competitor. It kicks off a bank run, and within 24 hours, the second biggest exchange in the crypto market is bankrupt. How insane. So essentially, it kicked off a collateral damage firestorm. And what's so fascinating about this case is you have a lot of people involved. You have real influencers with global audiences, NFL players, NBA players. You also have influencers in the YouTube space. And this is, to my knowledge, just off the top of my head, this might be the first time we've really seen something go awry that includes both global celebrities and influencers, YouTubers, more specifically. And they're all kind of guilty of the same thing. And it's fascinating to see the fallout.
What do you mean when you say bank run?
A bank run, for this example, is essentially there might not be money left in this company. They're insolvent. And so they're supposed to be holding customer deposits. And so if you hear that a bank or crypto exchange, whatever, that's supposed to be holding your money might be insolvent, what's the first thing a reasonable person would do? You go on your app and you say, give me my money back. And when that happens to the extent of $6 billion as reported, within 24 hours, if you only have, let's say, $1 billion in assets, and all of a sudden $6 billion worth of money is being asked for, you don't have the money to pay everyone out. And then when people aren't able to get their money, pandemonium comes in. And with social media, news stories spreads like wildfire. Once it's reported that your money might be gone, pandemonium sets in. And I think that's what we saw.
Should it be the case that a crypto exchange is using users' capital for anything other than simply holding it on their books ready for them to withdraw? I know that that's what banks do. Is that common practice, or should that be common practice for crypto exchanges?
Well, absolutely, because it's not their money, right? When you take on money, you should just get a cut of the fees, the small fees. That's how you make your money. Yeah, what's so dangerous about this is you have someone who took customer money and essentially went and gambled it away on something that's even more risky, which is these crypto tokens. What are they worth? I don't know. For me, in my eyes, I don't think they're worth anything, but there's a community that thinks they're worth something. Well, unfortunately, when that crypto token goes to nothing and that you're borrowing money against that token, you're leveraging trading it, it creates essentially a Ponzi scheme. And yeah, it's really unfortunate because you have one person that acted totally against the terms of service of his own company. And it created essentially a Ponzi scheme. And unfortunately, Ponzi schemes is they fall immediately. And it happens within 24 hours.
That's Sam Bankman-Fried, CEO
Correct.
And owner, founder of FTX and of Alameda Research, that are the two big companies that are involved in that. Can you just explain what's going on and how all of those client funds ended up going somewhere that they weren't supposed to?
I'd love to know where the money went. That's always the first question. So he's the owner of Alameda Research, which is a trading firm, and then he's also owns FTX. And now we're finding out that he was the owner of 3,000 different LLCs. It feels like. Where did the money go? Because he was buying real estate apparently right before, which, by the way, is usually an indication that they know they're at fault. Is right before the hammer comes down, they're always buying stuff. They somehow magically have money. They're buying $200 million worth. I think there's reports out there. Who knows what's true? But a lot of these guys go out and buy a bunch of assets that you might not be able to find. And yeah, it's really unfortunate. I'm guessing the money went in his pocket.
Really?
Well, sorry. We also Bankman-Fried. We also know that he was the second biggest political donor in the Democratic Party. So there's like layers to this story that might come out in the next week. We might find out this goes way deeper than just one bad actor. This could be a systemic issue.
Why was it that their business was operated out of and registered in the Bahamas? Is there some extra degrees of fuckery that you're allowed to do if you're over there?
It's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. My guess is yes, when you're unregulated, and that brings into question, the companies that you get behind or you invest in or you put your money in. If they're overseas, it adds a extra layer of risk, I think. I don't really know. My guess is because they weren't in the U.S., they're not regulated, and so they can get away with what they're doing.
Okay. Yes. So, should this have all been foreseen? Was this foreseeable? This a huge downfall is it right to say that the smart people were able to see this coming from a million miles away?
If you ask YouTube right now, everyone saw it coming, but my guess is no. Look, there's companies that put $200 million into this business. You have venture capital, numerous venture capitalists. You have people that looked at their books that didn't know. Of course, what's unfortunate about situations like this is the follow-up. What happens immediately after is the next week, everyone becomes a forensic researcher. And then they find one interview, one article, one incident, and they go, oh my God, how did we not see this coming? The challenge, it's always 2020. Like there's so many things out there that look shady that are totally legit. Unfortunately, when something bad happens, everyone looks to, how did we not see this? And then it becomes quote unquote obvious after the fact. So good question, depending on who you ask. Some people think they could have seen this coming. Seem to fool everyone. Why didn't they contact the SEC, right? If everyone knew it was a scam, why didn't you contact the SEC? You could have saved a lot of people money, right? If you want to play the moral game.
Did we not see this with SoftBank and WeWork as well, right? That they were supposed to be this hugely successful, they can do the forensic accounts, they put this money into a company that claims it's a tech company, and it's not a tech company, it's a real estate company, masquerading as a tech company. But because they had a seductive CEO, everybody was prepared to not observe perhaps some of the elephants that were in the room. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It does strike me as strange that no one saw this coming if, in retrospect, it was so obvious.
Well, yeah, I'm being a little facetious here because some people right now are making videos about how obvious it all was. And I think that's a little disingenuous. Like, it's good to have skepticism and raise concerns, by all means. And if you're right, bump your chest. You're right. However, I'm just saying that there's a lot of things that seem shady or seem like they're X, Y, and Z. And it's only until it comes out that it is that then those people are right? But they weren't. Were they going to the regulators? Were they going to the SEC? Right? Were they emailing people just saying like, hey, you should look into this a little more? I don't know. I would have never seen it coming, as did massive investors that put hundreds of millions of dollars in this company. What about Enron? Enron was a public company, right? The stuff just happens, unfortunately. It's very unfortunate, and people lose money. But yeah, now we're in that news cycle of let's figure out where did we go wrong. Yeah,
there's video clips of maybe the COO or something talking about how she only uses primary school level mathematics at her job, even though she's got a PhD. And Sam Bankman-Fried basically admitting to the fact that it's a large Ponzi scheme. And at the time, that looks like cutesy, casual language. In retrospect, that looks like a smoking gun. And
absolutely,
yeah, I think that it is an interesting one to consider why people put so much faith into Sam Bankman-Fried as somebody that I'd heard. I am not in the crypto space. I'm not a part of the investing world or the finance world. I'd heard through personal friends about some of the dodgy shit that he was doing, that he had access, a backdoor into the trades on the back end of FTX, and he was able to get in ahead of short positions and long positions on different trades in order to scalp extra money off the top for either himself or for FTX. So, I mean, again, but like, what am I going to do? Does that mean that I'm going to ignore this huge, what is it, second largest, third largest crypto exchange in the world? Like, it's only fortunate that I have the tiny sliver, like 2 grand's worth of Bitcoin that I own is on Coinbase. Like, had I have gone on a different app on a different day, it would have been FTX, and that would have been my money gone as well.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting question, which is promoting Coinbase right now, is it scammy? Should you get, did anyone who promoted crypto.com, Coinbase, they're all kind of the same, right? If you think the system is all a scam, right, in regards to these exchanges, then you'd say it's unethical. It's just what's challenging is you don't really know until it happens, right? Everyone's a genius after the fact. And unfortunately, we'll have that news cycle now. My guess is there's probably going to be another week of this, and then people will come to their senses and will start to dig in. Thankfully, what generally happens too is you have a group of people that realize like something bad happened. How can we protect ourselves from this in the future? And then that's when we start looking at the signs and we go, okay, well, let's start looking around in other places and try to figure out who else is going wrong.
Surely, though, there's some rightful retribution and vengeance and ire that needs to be directed at all of the people that ran that company. Like, it's not just about like, oh, okay, let's just let whatever $10 billion worth of capital go, and then we'll just move on. We'll learn from it and continue going forward. That's not the way it works.
Right. I agree. Yeah. Unfortunately, in situations like this, really everyone's to blame. Everyone who's involved, right? You influence people, you put your name to it. That's just part of the game. If you sponsor something, you're gonna face reputational damage if things go wrong. That's unfortunately part of the risk you take on with taking on money.
Have you been doing any research about what the CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, is doing right now? It seems like people are trying to track different jets and stuff out of the Bahamas, and he's going to Argentina or maybe Dubai or something with no extradition. I don't know.
Yeah, crypto Twitter right now is certainly an interesting place. I feel like it's drama for adults. Like we look at certain shows on TV like the Kardashians and guys are like, wow, I would never watch that stuff. But then like we tune into the most drama-full space on the internet, which is crypto Twitter. When stuff like this is happening, it is our version of drama. I don't know what he's doing. I don't think anyone knows what he's doing. There's a lot of speculation. It is pretty fascinating though. Once someone gets caught, what are they doing? They're always running.
Apparently, it seems like he's got maybe between $500 million and $1 billion of publicly known cash still left over. So you basically got unlimited funds to be able to find people to squirrel you away, to travel and be secure, provide security and close protection and shit like that for you. But I would guess that there will be a lot of people very, very keen to try and find out where he is. But I don't really know what you do. What do you do if you get your hands on Sam Bankman-Fried? Like, actually,
he's in the bathroom next to you.
You
go to a restaurant. He's next to you, going to the bathroom. You're just, hey, wait, you're the most hated man in the world right now.
What do you do? Well, I mean, what are the legalities? Are you aware of the legalities of what has been done? No, right?
No, not at all. Obviously, there's going to be criminal proceedings, but I have no idea. To me, it just seems you just go find him. Okay, here's the thing. We can track people down if they can't make a car payment, right? In Las Vegas, Nevada here. If someone doesn't make a car payment, somehow some dog the bounty hunter is able to find him within 24 hours. You're telling me we don't have the ability to find a guy worth $1 billion that's as public as him? I just don't buy it. And so I'm just shocked that this stuff, they don't have a full team of a full SWAT team outside his house or wherever he is, right? Can you not track his phone?
But if he's across multiple different countries and jurisdictions, who do you send? Do you send, did the American government send someone to Dubai?
That's fair. I guess that's the benefit of being in the Bahamas. He was in the Bahamas. So then, there's reports, who knows what's true. There's reports of him like paying off the local police. So then that comes into question. If someone's making the equivalent of $30,000 a year, if someone paid them $1 million to just say, don't show up to my house and say I'm not here. I'm not saying that's the ethical thing to do, but I get it. Right?
Well, that was one of the reasons that John McAfee decided to stay in where was he? Not Venezuela. He was in. I don't remember. He was in some insane El Salvador or Belize or something like that. And one of the big reasons was that corruption was going to be much more easy for him to complete. And if you've got someone that can backhand all of the local prosecutors and police chiefs, you've got a lot less to worry about. So
there's a Kanye West song where it goes, no one man should have all this power. It's kind of scary when you realize how much damages can be brought to the world by one single person. This guy pulled a massive trick on so many people, and the financial damages are in the billions with a B from one person's behavior. Think of how scary that is. And there's a system in place to try and prevent this to some degree, right? You have people investing their money. Obviously, they're going to do their best to make sure their money's safe in regards to the investors and people close to him. You even had employees at his company that I'm sure are great people that had no idea, and they were able to get fooled. Scary, isn't it?
I don't know, man. I mean, I wonder what sort of pressures have been placed on him behind the scenes. The guy is ultimately the bearer of responsibility. That's what the CEO and founder owner's job is. But there's no way that it's only him that was involved in this. You know, this conversation. My favorite conspiracy is that SBF was a government insider who's trying to give the government a good justification to more heavily scrutinize the crypto industry by purposefully bringing it down.
That would be an amazing movie plot coming to you in 2025. If that's true, man, that is even more scary, I think, because there's an inherent level of trust we have in a lot of people in government, regardless of if you like government or not. I think there is an inherent trust, like they're going to go after the bad guys. And if you find out they were in bed with the bad guys and in some sense giving them more power, who's to say someone else out there isn't as corrupt?
Well, especially given that the crypto community is very anti-authority, very anti-government. It doesn't want oversight. The entire reason for having a decentralized currency is that you're safe and secure and walled off from all of this stuff. And yeah, I think this is one of the reasons that I learned about your glowing. Have you heard about glowing on the internet? Okay, so it's I think it's a term that people use to identify someone that they think is potentially a federal agent or a government insider that is trying to move the conversation in a particular direction. And your glowing is, we can see that you're actually not one of us. You're one of these bad actors that's in here to try and infiltrate and get us to do stuff or say stuff that we're not supposed to.
Huh, not familiar.
Well, you're going to learn something new every day. What about
I'll have to go Google this.
What about stuff like Coinbase then? Would you be worried about Coinbase?
From the standpoint of it falling, I think there's going to be a massive fallout because my sense of crypto, and by the way, I'm pretty ignorant to all this, but I know enough to, at least when I see the crypto Twitter talk about this, that there's going to be massive fallout. Meaning a lot of these companies seem to be interconnected to some degree. There's loans and there's leverage, and once you have one company fall, if they had given out a loan or something to someone else, or they're receiving a loan, now all of a sudden the other company might be tied to them, or they had their assets on FTX to some degree. It's kind of scary to think about how quickly it can all fall.
Okay.
So in regards to Coinbase, like is Coinbase just as vulnerable now? Is there going to be a bank run on Coinbase as influencers start talking about get your coins off these exchanges, right? Is there going to be another bank run? And you know how momentum happens, right? You've had all the stuff that happened this summer. Now you've got FTX. Who's to say that all the momentum doesn't cause another bank run?
It does seem like since there's been blood in the water over the last year, I think if you go back, the all-time high of Bitcoin was almost exactly a year ago, I want to say. If you put in a year, it's like 67,000, 75% down year on year, which is just fucking terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And all of the conversations about NFTs have stopped. All of the conversations about decentralized banks and that we should adopt it as our national currency and all of this stuff, all of those conversations have stopped. And you think, well, when something is an appreciating asset, everybody's happy to blow it up. But when something's a depreciating asset, everybody's terrified to even touch it.
I also think the sentiment turns as well, because crypto for the most part has been a get rich easy scheme, right? You see your neighbor, you see your friend who made 1,000x returns in 6 months, and there's a certain hopium that comes with it, right? If you're not making much money, if you just find the right coin, you will go from $20,000 net worth to $2 million. It's happened enough. There's so many examples of it on social media that you feel like you have the ability to be the next one. And I think what happens when the market tanks the way it has is a lot of people lose that sentiment. And this is where markets turn, especially in something that is driven a lot by momentum, like crypto is. And so I wonder if the next year or two, you see a lot of turn in the market sentiment.
What do you think?
That being just people's perceptions of possibility. I actually had a thought that I want to share with you. So one thing that makes America great is we all have this ability of upward mobility. Meaning, if we work hard, there's the ethos of if you work hard, or if you start a business, or you invest in the right thing, then you will be able to move up in the social status. I think what happens during downturns, and what we were seeing now, the stock market's crashed, real estate's never been this unaffordable, and then you also have the crypto crash, is I wonder if people are going to start losing that feeling like they can have upward mobility, right? Because if all of that's either stagnant or crashing 75% that you just alluded to, how do you go from making $30,000 a year to $100,000 a year? Taking on a bunch of debt? That's scary, right? Student loan debt. And that's what I'm really curious to see over the next 12 months is if there's a feeling of that lack of potential upward mobility within this country.
So if a poor market means that the cultural sense of America being the land of hope and blue sky vision, that might fall away. I don't know. I mean, if you were to read what most of Twitter and headlines talk about at the moment, I think that seems like it's long gone to people. That's a very cynical view that a lot of people hold, but it's a lot of the people that seem to be in positions of social and media influence that they talk about America as being this awful, terrible place that needs to be basically torn down and rebuilt anew. I was driving along from Houston back to Austin with my housemate about a month ago, and we were going past these two huge flagpoles with these flags with the size of a house, right? And they're moving super, super slowly. It's like really like cinematic and beautiful and artistic. Texas flag and the America flag. And I was looking at it and thinking, that's really fucking cool. Like to see the pride in not only your state, but in the country at large. And I was like, dude, do you know what it is? I really enjoy the fact that I'm here at the moment, but I kind of wish that I'd been here during the 90s. I feel like the 90s was this sort of absolute golden era where you'd got out of the other side of the Cold War. No one really had too many fears about being nuked. 9/11 hadn't happened yet. And you just had this culture, sports, movies, cinema, Hollywood thing. It was before
Jordan.
It was basically a country of Michael Jordan. Yeah. And that to me just seems like such a golden era. And I don't know. I love being here. I think it's a fantastic country that I very much enjoy my time in. But it doesn't seem like the same country that I have read about from the 90s.
That's a really interesting idea. And it is something I will be tracking closely. My belief is that right now we're starting to see the market turn, both in numbers on a screen, but also in people's beliefs and in their belief that they can make a lot of money investing. I've noticed there's an energy on YouTube, and you could argue maybe this isn't the best view of America at whole. I'll totally accept that argument. However, I've seen an energy that exists that I don't think existed 12 to 24 months ago. And I'm worried that a lot of young people don't think they have the ability or live within a system that will provide the opportunity for them to better their lives. And that's what I'm going to be tracking very closely. The reason why I bring that up is I think there is a lot of pushback against influencers right now. And I think there's a lot of, I don't like to jump to the word jealousy. I feel like that's a cliche trope. But I get the sense that there's a lot of people struggling and influencers are succeeding. And I think what made this FTX fiasco so interesting is that there were very popular influencers, ones that make a lot of money, both the NBA stars, Tom Brady, and YouTubers. And they essentially made money to a large degree, a significant amount, and then influence people to lose money. And I've never seen the energy before that's happening right now. Right? It's unfortunate circumstance. It's awful. It's really sad that people lost money. I would just be curious to see if like the same thing happened 3 years ago, if the same pushback would have happened. I don't know if it's the same, then my theory's wrong, but I would bet that the energy is much different today.
Like the current cultural milieu has primed itself to be very, very negatively reactive to this. That'll be interesting. All right. So what do you think? Give me your thoughts. What do you think about the influencers that have been involved in promoting FTX?
What's so fascinating, too, about this recent week with the FTX fiasco and the pushback and seeing all the, I read the comments, so I see comments and videos all throughout YouTube. And I think everyone's to blame, right? If there's any fraud that goes on, if someone promotes something, right? If you go to your neighbor and say, hey, you should buy a house, it's a great time to buy real estate. the second they buy, the market crashes and their house is worth $100,000 less. Like, yeah, in a sense, you should be blamed a little bit, even though it's not entirely your fault. So there'll always be blame to give out. What I find interesting is where they're pointing the blame, and also just the unfortunate nature that people were sponsoring something that was a complete fraud without them knowing. And so to me, the real question is, did people know it was a fraud or a scam and still promote it? That's where my ethical line is drawn in the sand.
Why do you think that your position in CoffeeZilla is different on this?
We actually agree to a large extent. I think we were just disagreeing on like some points that aren't really that relevant. For instance, here's a great question. So he brought up the idea of Tom Brady's not a financial expert. Steph Curry is not either. So you don't go to them for financial advice, right? My position is they were getting paid, let's just assume 50 million, right? For Tom Brady to do what he did is probably, I mean, he'd have to get paid some serious dough. My guess is he probably got paid somewhere in the 30 to 50 million range, which means he's probably influencing that much, right? Any business sense will tell you they had reason to believe whatever they paid him, they'd make back at least 1-to-1. And so who's really at fault? If Tom Brady's not a financial expert and people aren't going to him for financial advice, I totally agree on that point, right? If you go to a financial YouTuber, there absolutely is more responsibility on them. I've never argued that. My point is that Tom Brady influenced at least 100x to 1,000x the damages. And so if we're being reasonable people here, and let's figure out where to place the blame, my point is that if someone caused 1,000x person A causes 1,000x the damages as person B, a reasonable person would place the blame more on person A. They both deserve blame. And that's what I said in my video. And what I'm bringing up is how interesting it is to see the feedback. And this is where I get to like the public sentiment and the negativity, is that I was being incredibly reasonable, even said, you can blame my friends. They are partially to blame here. This is not like an argument I was trying to fight against. It's absolutely true. My point is that I believe there were other factors at this. There were other people that are just to blame. And then CoffeeZilla also brought up the point that so-and-so is not an expert because this happened, right? Well, if we use that same logic, then anyone who invested in this company is not an expert. I would like to consider BlackRock, Sequoia Capital, and these other massive funds as experts. I will not change my position on that because of FTX, nor does anyone change their opinion. So why now are you changing the opinion of someone who influenced them? Does that make sense?
It does. Does it not make sense also to say that if you push something which ultimately turns out to be a scam, that your validity and how much faith people should have in you goes down a lot?
Absolutely. You should absolutely question it. And now you should wonder what's next, right? If someone were to promote a scam or a fraud and the next thing they promote is something similar, I would say major red flags. That's not a good look, right?
So I understand the approach that you're taking, which is kind of like a utilitarian thing. There is a total pot of damage that has been done in terms of every influencer that contributed to FTX. We should be proportionately putting our vengeance and our displeasure toward those that did the most. But when you're referring to most of the content that's going out at the moment, it's going out on YouTube. It's specifically being aimed at YouTubers. And given the fact that it is on a platform that these people exist on, Tom Brady doesn't have a YouTube channel. He is not a YouTuber first and foremost. YouTube has every right to point fingers at members of its own community and say, you done fucked up. We're going to make everybody know that this is something that was a huge error on your part as somebody that claimed to be a financial expert.
I absolutely agree. And yeah, I never disagreed with that point at all. It's like if you went on Tom Brady's website, right, you're probably going to see comments about Tom Brady for this situation. You're not going to see comments about Graham Stephan, right? So I totally get that argument. My point is that you can lead, because all this comes down to, it's almost all clickbait, right? Like a lot of the thumbnails is like a little sensational. And, so-and-so's a scammer, they're the worst person ever, right? I get it. It's sensational. My point is that you can make videos about these people on YouTube. 100%. That's a smart thing to do. I would do the same thing if I was talking about something that happened with YouTubers. I'm going to put the YouTubers in the thumbnail. My point is that throughout the video, you then bring out a reasonable argument that contains what I'm saying, right? So you start with the YouTubers. They're at fault. However, you then introduce the fact that there are many other factors in this. But I think if you only target 3 or 4 individuals, to me, that's dishonest. And that's where I came from. And that's why I responded the way I did. When I don't think something's fair, I'm going to mention it.
You'd mentioned that you're friends with a bunch of the guys that are kind of culpable at the moment. I think you're in the same management company,
So creators agency. Yeah. Yeah, they get us sponsorship deals.
Is that jading your view of these people at all? Is that causing you to be less unbiased with your approach?
Do you think we are capable of understanding our biases?
To a degree.
You think so?
Yes. I think that it's your job to discount the position that you hold based on what you think your biases would be about those people. So, like, if someone starts criticizing my roommate and best friend, I know that there is going to be a part of me that is going to immediately stick up for him no matter what the criticism is. But I need to account for that. It's my job to think, I'm close to this person. I have a ton of biases that are playing with this. So if I want to rationally look at this, which is what you're proposing we take this rational utilitarian view, how much damage is being caused overall. That is absolutely something that needs to be turned inward on yourself when you're saying, okay, just how biased am I when it comes to me talking about my friends and co-creators within this agency?
I agree. So number one, this is why I bring up that I'm friends with them throughout the video. So I make it very clear that you can assess that however you want, right? I feel like it would be disingenuous if I didn't bring up that point. And then I was trying to play like, oh yeah, I barely know them, when in fact I do. I also, by the way, I put creators agency email in my thumbnail or in my description, and I have pictures all over my Instagram. It's like it's kind of funny that people are trying to expose this as if it's like very public. So yes, I'm attached to them, but also we're discounting the fact that I teamed up with them because I like them in the first place, and I think they're good people who doesn't. Dude, I eat dinner with these guys every Tuesday. I hang out with them for hours. You don't think we discuss this stuff? That's unfortunately what doesn't go into YouTube videos is you don't see the hours behind the scenes where I actually talk to them about FTX. And anyway, I've also, in regards to bias, I think the best way to challenge a bias is to bring up an identical scenario, but you remove the emotions. Meaning, let's do the exact same scenario, but let's replace the people where you may have a bias towards, in this case, my friends. Let's replace them with random people. Let's call them Ty Lopez, Grant Cardone, and all these people. Had they promoted FTX, here's the thing. I'm very, very, very confident that my position would not change. Obviously, you can believe whatever you want to believe. You don't know me as well as I know myself. The story is Sam Bankman-Fried, right? When I look at stories, I like talking about fraud. I like talking about things that have been proven. To me, the story is SBF and how he fooled everyone and how he fooled some of the smartest minds in the world. Additionally, I would have talked about the influencers who were at fault for influencing this. The problem, and the reason why I made the video I did, is I would not be making a sensational title and making the video only about them. The story is Sam Bankman-Fried, and maybe halfway through the video, I'd bring up Ty Lopez, Grant Cardone, influence people to lose money. Let's in the most simple terms, right? They influence people to lose money. Are they at fault? Yes, but I would have began the story with all the people who I believe are way more at fault. And so, am I biased? Of course, it's so funny. Am I biased? Of course I am. But also in the same video, CoffeeZilla is the one person, like I respect him more than anyone. He's probably my favorite creator. And I disagree with him, even knowing by disagreeing with him that I'd cause an emotional response. I could have easily put clips of his in the video and just not disagreed and like made people not react the way they did. And so, am I biased? Yes. But I also felt like I was more than fair because I'm defending friends and I'm actually going against the one person I respect the most. Like, we have similar audiences, way more than, say, like a Graham Stephan or Andre Jick. And so I was essentially going against the narrative of my own audience. And so when people ask if I'm biased, well, sure, we all are to some degree. But that's taking away from the fact that I kind of stuck my neck out knowing that there'd be a massive negative response. And I still made the video. I didn't have to make the video. So that's my answer.
I think that one of the concerns people have, one of the difficult positions that anybody in the call-out space, the grift scam identification space has, people feel like the policeman that breaks the law is doing something that's particularly egregious because they're the ones that are supposed to live by the law. They enact it, right? And it's kind of like you guys are the police of the internet in a way. It's like somebody steps out of line, we're going to find it, we're going to do a video on it, and everybody's going to laugh at them and call them a wanker. That means that you get held to the highest level of scrutiny of anybody. And the concern, I think, is that if you're supposed to be on the side of holding people who promote scams accountable, this should be applied in the same degree of intensity toward everybody that was a part of FTX.
wholeheartedly agree, by the way. That's the best argument presented towards me, and one that I actually very much appreciate when people challenge me like that, because I totally agree. The thing is, in my video, I say that you can place blame on them. I'm not saying don't place blame. I'm saying everyone is at fault. The argument I presented is just to have a weighted scale. So we don't argue in circles here. Because I said weighted scale, what I was really trying to say is you can blame person A and person B. Just send a little more of the vengeance energy towards person A if he caused way more damages. But yeah, I totally agree, man.
What level of scrutiny do you think influencers should go through when they do a partnership like this? Obviously, one of the questions that we're talking about is how foreseeable was this? In retrospect, it seems completely obvious. In advance, it seemed almost completely unobvious. How much work do you think these influencers should do to work out whether or not what they're promoting is legit?
I think step one of this, or kind of the first question, I think transparency is always best, right? If someone was emailing them the whole time just saying, I have secret intel, do not promote this product, it is bad, and you still do, yeah, a little more burden of proof is on you to show that you're not the bad guy here. So I think it's always important to come out and just share like what exactly happened from your perspective. I see nothing wrong. If you were duped as well, I think it's important to talk about it and not shy away from it and let people know that you were duped as well. I think what's important is that you question. You can always question people. It's always fair to be questioned. That's why I'm always open to criticism. I'm totally cool with people making videos about me. Say whatever you want. You can question my reputation, credibility, standards of ethics, whatever. Totally cool with everything. I've never had a problem with people criticizing or making videos simply questioning. And so in a situation like this, when there is a scenario where you influence people to lose money, I think you absolutely should have your whole operation questioned. And I think what's most important is now to see how they respond, right? In a time of crisis, I think how you respond tells you everything you need to know. If you begin promoting, let's say, crypto altcoins or something after this fiasco, or begin promoting another crypto exchange, probably not a good look, even if it is reasonably safe. And so I think that's where you question first, and then you evaluate the behavior after. If the behavior after doesn't change, I think you then can attack with the vengeance I'm seeing today. I think that's the fairest way to do this.
Well, that's kind of what we were talking about at the beginning, right? That there is obviously a lot of distaste at the moment on the internet, and the closest people that can be touched and that a lot of the internet feels like they can impact, literally the guy that everybody is trying to find, no one knows where he is on the planet, right? We don't know where Sam Bankman-Fried is. So he's currently off the table. People can send all of the tweets that they want, but nobody feels like they're actually going to impact Sam Bankman-Fried's day. Like, he's already having a pretty bad day, right? The people that most of the internet that do have disgust at what happened with the FTX debacle, the ones that they feel like they can apply some pressure to are the creators of the size of a Tom Nash or a Graham Stephan or whatever. And the reason that they're putting pressure on them is because they think that they can make some sort of a change, that they're going to appear within their mentions, that someone's going to send them the video or whatever.
And they know they'll be heard, right? That's most important. If BlackRock had a comment section, would we see the same energy? I don't know. I'm not sure. But you can't access them. You can't access Tom Brady. You technically can respond to his Twitter or something, or his Instagram, but he's not going to read it. He's not going to see it. Yeah, so this is the front line of the pushback. And that's why, and look, this is what we sign up for. I can't really complain, right? Whenever you do get pushback, it's like we get the glory, we get the fun life, we get the, for some of us, the money, extreme levels of money, and we get a lot of benefits. And then when something happens, yeah, I think that was another coffee criticism, is like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, when you sign up to sponsor something, you're kind of putting your reputation on the line. And I think when something goes wrong, you do take a hit for sure.
Yeah, that's why I would be hesitant to say you get like a life, you're allowed to have one of these errors within this domain, but then if you do it again, then we're going to come after you. It's like, no, like fucking $10 billion of money has been lost. Like, you don't get to get that get out of jail free card. It's like, oh, it's only a mistake if I make it twice. I don't think that's a strong argument.
My argument, that is?
No, just that if that was what was being put forward. I don't know if that's precisely. I think that's not exactly what you're saying. But the degree of scrutiny that people should go through about the companies that they are partnering with, that's a really interesting question. Like, how much due diligence are you supposed to do? Presumably BlackRock did a fair bit of it, But then we also see situations like the SoftBank and WeWork one, where they also did and continue to pump tons and tons of money in. So you know that humans have these biases where a charismatic owner or someone that's got a great story or whatever can encourage people to spend more money than they should do. And okay, well, just how much time and effort should be spent on this, and where's the threshold, right? Like you say, if it was an obvious shitcoin, well, what's an obvious shitcoin? Like if you've got selling gravity and promoting like a fundamental law of the universe on one side and promoting an absolute shitcoin on the other, at what point you are no longer liable for something going wrong? Like if you promoted the US dollar, right, which done all right over the last year, if you promoted the US dollar and it went down, like how culpable are you for that? Like it's an interesting question to look at where that line lies. And I think that the internet at the moment seems to suggest that it lies below where most of these influencers are, i.e. that they are culpable for pretty much everything that's happened.
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. Here's where I come in. I like to look at intentions of behavior in all scenarios. I try to evaluate the best I can. I think that matters most. Like, what are your real intentions, right? If your intentions, if you're promoting an altcoin, some of these altcoins, and it's incredibly likely that they're going to pump and dump, right? And especially those who took money right before a pump and knowing there was going to be a dump. Your intentions are clearly to take money at the expense of your audience. I think that's an entirely different argument than someone who takes money, right? So you're both taking money to promote something. But in option two, you legitimately think and have reason to believe that your audience will benefit from the product or service you're promoting. In regards to the due diligence, that's such a fascinating argument because we have an inherent level of trust in everyone. Right, like you assume BlackRock did due diligence, but now, in my point about like the week following, you're going to find all these red flags. Right, there was some story about Sam Bankman-Fried in a meeting where he was trying to raise money. He's like playing video games and eating snacks. It's like that is incredibly large red flag. However, there's probably 100 examples of someone in a very questionable manner in a fundraising meeting. And yet it turns out to be the most legitimate thing in the world. That's why I'm saying there's not a single, in life, there's never like a single thing that you can point to that goes, there's an obvious fraud or problem. And I can spot it from the start. It's like you can find examples. That's why life is so nuanced. Yeah, it's challenging.
What would you do if you were one of the influencers that had been involved in this? What would you do moving forward?
Well, first off, thankfully I didn't promote it. Thankfully, yeah, I purposely stayed away from crypto, anything crypto related, man. I'm not into crypto space. It helps that my audience is not crypto related. So it kind of gave me that easy out where I just, anything crypto, let's stay away. I think the first thing is you are incredibly transparent about the process you went through to figure out that it's legit. Because by the way, I've had conversations with these guys behind closed doors that no one knows about. Like they've done way more due diligence than the average person. And this is, by the way, this also goes into my video that I make that unfortunately people just don't see, which is you don't think I've talked to them about this stuff over dinner. Like they know way more. There's my buddy, Tom Nash is another one. I'm not going to explain, but he had a very trusted source that like, let's just leave it at, he had every reason to believe this was an incredibly legitimate company with way more credibility. His source is way more credibility than the average audience. And so anyway, I think it's important to share all that you know, if you can, share how much money you made. And typically it's best to share the process on how you're going to improve. So you first show empathy towards the people who lost money. You second, share complete transparency about everything you went through or even all the benefits you had from it or you gained and just say, this is really unfortunate. And then most importantly, you show that you're willing to improve from what happened. I think that's the best case scenario. But full disclosure, I've never experienced something like that. I've never gone through like a media scandal. And so I'm just, from my perspective, that seems to be the best case. Like whenever you see people handle it really well, that seems to be the process they follow.
Yeah, it's an easy sideline tactic, I think. But when you're in the midst of it, someone saying, I got paid 50 grand a month or whatever from FTX. Meanwhile, all of the people watching are 50 grand down, on their investment. I haven't seen, I don't know whether Tom's done a video about this yet. I'd seen maybe a couple of the ones online. There is a tone to finance YouTube that's a bit dispassionate. Like, it doesn't really feel like there's a massive amount of emotion going in there. It does sometimes feel a little bit like a press release that's coming down from an office on the 45th floor. And I do think that you're right that, genuinely showing empathy, not just reading lines that sound like empathy, but genuinely showing empathy is important. I also don't think that I've seen anybody disclose how much money they were paid for this partnership yet. So I would say that given your tactics, as of yet, no one's followed any of them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a really uncomfortable conversation, right? Is you got paid for work and you got, let's just call it a fair market rate. And then when that thing goes wrong, like, do you give the money back? Here's the thing. Like, yes, in a perfect scenario, I got paid $5,000 to do this, and I'm going to give $5,000 to these homeless puppies down the street, right? And oh my God, you're the good guy here. But what happens when it's, a decent amount, but you did it for so long that, you're worth something too. You're putting in work and giving value to the world other than the sponsorship, right? And the sponsorships help you pay your bills and help you produce the content that hopefully is helpful outside of the sponsorship, right? Yeah, what is your responsibility in making people whole? That is an incredibly tough ethical question, and something that I'm not really going to speak further on because I don't want to position my friends as doing the right or wrong thing, because that's their fight. I'm not in this. So, what would I do? Yeah. And by the way, I think it totally changes. If you get paid $1,000 and you've got a lot of money, you're probably just going to pay it off. Just, hey, I'll give it up. But, what happens if my net worth is X? What happens if I'm getting paid, a significant amount from that sponsorship? And now I'm not liquid, right? If whatever I got paid, if I'm not liquid that, or if it's going to massively damage my life, where's the ethical line between giving it? And by the way, what's also challenging about this is the variable that you can't account for is that just by giving the money away, let's say, it doesn't mean that everything's made right. Maybe it didn't even save your reputation. So that might not even be the solution, right? You might, if you gave away the funds, you might help out your cause in the moment. But is that angry mob that's coming after you, are they going to be fine with that and agree that that is an adequate follow-up to what happened? Or are they still going to be just as angry?
Ultimately,
that's an incredibly challenging question.
Ultimately, what people want to see is someone that looks and sounds and genuinely is sorry about what's happened to everybody. Yeah. Like, you could give the money back and do all the rest of it, but if you don't have genuine sympathy and sorrow for what's going on. But on the other side of this, man, like, I understand that it's really cool on the internet to throw shade at these guys, and Tom's been on the show before, and I like him. I think he seems like a cool guy from however much we've spoken so far. And I don't know, it's like it's a hard situation for them as well. Like, we're
all dealing with this together. There is no standard, right?
So they didn't want this to happen, right? I understand that. I do think that a lot of the ire that's on the internet at the moment is justified. I also think that it's a really fucking important learning opportunity where you go, right, maybe all crypto stuff should just be, and anybody, it should be completely out of the purview of a good ethical influencer or creator. And anybody that does immediately raises a red flag as like, look, this person's pushing something that shouldn't be done. Maybe there's a question around, given how many Save the Kids token, NFT, pump and dump things, the argument on the other side of that is, have we not already learned this fucking lesson? Like, how long have people been dicking about in the decentralized finance space? And there's been rug pulls and there's been all sorts of other stuff. Surely someone should have realized before now that being involved with this is putting your audience at huge risk.
Yeah, I totally agree. By the way, I think the most fair criticism that, funny enough, I haven't really seen being thrown out is that the YouTubers in question almost all universally follow sound investing principles, which is max your 401k, get a good job, invest in index funds over the long haul, invest in real estate. These are all like reasonably safe and just proven over time. And then to promote crypto, even though their portfolio might have contained a small amount of crypto. So it's like, hey, I use this exchange from 5% of my portfolio is crypto. I do think a lot of the ire and the anger is coming because their reputation, their brand, their investing strategies has all been one way. And then they promoted this highly risky asset class and possibly influence people to engage in investing strategies that they don't follow, right? Even though they might say, hey, only invest 5% in crypto, maybe people put 100%. And I think that's where a lot of the anger comes from, because I would almost guarantee, I haven't been able to prove this, that crypto YouTubers who are probably promoting FTX and are like the DGen, this like cool like DGen, I'm going all in on Dogecoin. If they promoted FTX, I can almost guarantee that their audience didn't turn on them because that's kind of baked into their brand.
Everybody already expected that they were a piece of shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't say piece of shit, but just like some of these cultures is just I'm going all in on the next 1000x coin, and it's all kind of part of the gimmick, right? It's kind of like here's an interesting scenario. So if I'm a degenerate gambler and I'm all about playing slots, and I talk about like, hey, with $500 a month extra, I just go play slots, and like over time I'll probably lose. By the way, this is the best casino to play at. I don't think that's unethical because your brand is about playing at casinos. However, if I, being the guy who's like, be safe with your investments, invest smartly, if I all of a sudden started promoting a casino, I think it would be appropriate for people to come at me. And you're promoting the same thing, the same service, the same product. Why does one audience deserve to attack the creator? Why does the other not attack the creator? I think my theory is that I think this is part of it.
Yeah, I'm not convinced ethically that that's right, but I think in reality that's how it would happen. That people just look. I'm not convinced that Tom or Graham are going to take solace in the fact that their highly regarded brand position is the only reason that they're getting as much kickback as they are at the moment. I don't think that's going to make them feel very good, although it kind of is like a backhanded compliment in a way. I also don't think that it's necessarily going to make the people that are complaining at them feel any less virtuous about complaining. Basically, the situations like this, it is almost impossible to turn down the volume. It's basically just not going to happen. So if it was me, if one of the guys was like, what do I do? Another friend of mine, True Geordie, at the moment, man, I don't know whether you've seen, that guy has been fucking unpersoned from pretty much everything that was earning him money. Gymshark dropped him, MyProtein dropped him, Poker Stars or Poker.com dropped him, and then he got banned from Twitch. All of those, gone, completely gone. And if I was to give advice to any of those guys, he'd be like, there is no way of speeding this situation up. Put your apology out, make it sincere, which was a criticism that True Geordie had with his first one. He put this apology out, and then at the end of the video did like a, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm like, even though it was done in a semi-jokey fashion, I was like, oh dude, come on. Like the optics are not good here. Put your apology out and just wait.
I agree. What's unfortunate about media, by the way, media scandals is almost like pretentious, as if we're that important. This is such like a 2-week thing. But anyway, I think when you have scandals, and what makes it so challenging and what makes someone look like they lack empathy is that truly the best way to do this, the best way is to move on as if nothing happened. Because when you have an angry mob, they're super emotional, and no matter what you do is a loss, right? So unfortunately, the best case scenario is just to move forward. And I'm not saying pretend like it didn't happen, but you just move forward and you don't address it.
You think?
Yeah, I'm not saying the best as far as creating the audience or keeping that relationship with the audience. I'm just saying in media scandals, in almost all scenarios, what do lawyers tell you? Don't speak. You just move on. You have to let the fire go out.
I think that from a legal perspective, that might be right. When it comes to this new world, though, when you have a vacuum of information, it sucks in speculation. And that speculation causes absolute fucking havoc. And you look like a complete dick if you just roll forward with the new earnings report from Apple is out and here's 4 reasons why it's what. Like, no. Hang on. There's a huge FTX 10 billion sized elephant in the room. Like, we need to deal with this. If it was me, I would say, look, I think now is not the time to post any new content. Get the apology out there. Wait for a while for everything to calm down. Maybe come back and talk about what you've learned. Make some statements about how you're going to change going forward. If you were to say, I'm never going to work with another crypto exchange again. This is a promise that I'm going to make to you. This is a lesson that I've learned. This is a like, look, how have you changed? This is what you said. People want to see change in terms of behavior on the other side of this. It's early to see.
I totally agree. I tried to separate those two, by the way. I think the best thing to do in almost all scenarios is just move on, like selfishly, because what happens is if you start addressing things, you might bring up another angle and then people will make videos about that and you're rekindling the flame. So my point is that if you just move on, like let them have their moment, they'll have 3 days to make all the videos about you and then they'll have to move on to something else because they're just going to regurgitate themselves. But within this space, I'm saying with creating a relationship with your audience, what you said is the best way. So I entirely agree. And it's unfortunate because you have to go through that pain period of like, yo, I messed up, or You take a week off from making videos, which is a hurt, albeit small, but a hurt to the income, a hurt to the views and all that stuff. Yeah, I agree.
What do you think this means for the future of crypto? It was already something that people were hugely skeptical about if they weren't in it. It is, yep, you were the one that was hugely skeptical about it. It seems to have been, over the last 12 months, just a calamity of errors. Faceplant after faceplant after faceplant of things that would make someone that had even good faith lose faith, and someone that was skeptical say, never for me.
I feel validated, to be honest. That's
Are you smoking at the moment?
Because people lost money. And so when you feel validated when people lose money, it's like never fun. However, I was saying a year ago, invest in real estate. Don't invest in crypto. It's at a bubble. Please be careful. Like, there's going to be a small subset of you that crush it in crypto, and you guys are awesome, but 95% of you should not be touching crypto. And when it's popping, you look like the idiot. And I took a bunch of flames for probably a month. NFTs, crypto. I made a video like NFT markets, or the NFT bubble's about to burst, right? And I made these videos, and people came at me, ugly comments like, oh my God, Spencer's an idiot. I made so much money. Well, a year later, and I said in the videos, I said, in a year, I'm going to have significantly higher net worth than the people who are big into crypto. And other than the 1% of people who figured out and they trade and they're excellent, 90% of you, I'm going to have multiples more net worth. And it came true. So that's the validation part. Now, ego aside, I think it's very unfortunate to see so many young investors lose money. I think a lot of young kids were persuaded, very accurate to this conversation, but persuaded, influenced into crypto from TikTok and Instagram. And I'm the guy on the side saying like, yo, this is not a good investing principles. This is all gambling. Some of you are going to win. Most of you are going to lose. And I really hope that young investors don't lose sight of like what investing is, because they're taking a punch early. I'm fascinated to see how long the market lasts, this bear market, because I think crypto is going to be wiped out for 3 years. And I think what is going to also happen is that get rich easy mindset is gone. And so all these people that were coming in and gambling, all that liquidity is gone. Are institutional investors going to pour money in now? I don't know. Maybe they do, and that will combat my argument. However, if a lot of retail money it no longer enters, how is crypto going to survive? The altcoins, how do they survive?
Yes, but I don't think that you can underestimate the power of somebody believing that they can get rich off of absolutely nothing.
Very fair.
Right.
Very fair.
The Mike Winnett's intro to his old entrepreneur thing was the people that got the richest during the gold rush in the 1800s weren't the people that went searching for gold. They were the people that sold the shovels. For sure. As long as there is an incentive for someone to tell you that you can get rich, they will find a cognitive bias or a neurolinguistic programming way of writing the correct piece of website copy or getting the correct influencer at the right time with the right script to put the right video out. And the number of people that are going to continue to fall for that, because this one's different, I think that there are unlimited lives on that. There is a unlimited number of times that same formula can be used. Is it going to have to look different? Yes. But there's a literally infinite number of ways that you can combine words on a page. So,
and how powerful is that too, by the way? So like, yes, I agree. That will be influential, and there will always be people that sign up for a course on how to get rich in 6 months. How many people fall for that is always the question, right? Because if a lot of people do, then yeah, there's going to be liquidity, and every little dog poo inu, zombie Inu and stuff is just going to pop up, right? But once all that money leaves, once all that little gambling money leaves, I don't know.
Oh, so what you're saying is that because there's going to be less capital to support these projects, there is going to be less places for people to waste their money.
Yes, exactly. Because a lot of these projects succeeded because the velocity from the start was so powerful, right? They get a bunch of people in the Discord. You'd have 1,000 people sign in, and there was no liquidity. So if you put it at 10 zeros 1, I don't know what number that is, right? So if $1,000 enters into the coin, it all of a sudden the market cap's $1 million or whatever. You get a Discord full of 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 people from Twitter and Instagram and all this, and marketing shout outs, and then all these people put money into the system. Within the first 24 hours, the coin spikes, and then all of a sudden it attracts more. Well, what happens when all of those Discords don't exist? What happens if there's only a couple and the money's really not that good, and the early spike is not that great, and people don't make money, and then they're like, I'm not going to be in the next project?
Think about it like this. Think about it like each 5 to 10 year miniature generation that is thinking about investing needs to learn a lesson of pain in order to ensure that someone that has the predisposition to a get-rich-quick scheme gets burned so that they don't lose tons of money. Treat it like an inoculation, right? Like, this is a small loss. And for some people, it's going to be entire life savings, right? That they had absolutely everything in FTX and that's now gone and it's gated and they can't get it out. Like, awful for those people. For a bunch of other people, it's going to be smaller amounts, right? Large portions, perhaps, of their net worth, but an amount which is recoverable as far as they will move forward. And that means that in future, they're going to look at investing in a different way. Because I think that the fundamental desire to get rich easy is never going to change amongst humans. And the incentive for the people that want to capitalize on those people is never going to change. I think that you're going to just continue to end up with this same repeating cycle every 10 years or every 5 years over and over. And it's just going to be an inoculation each time. And it's going to be a new cohort of people that come in. And every time that it happens, they go, who could have seen this coming? If you'd spoken to somebody that was 10 years older than you, maybe they could have told you about the .com bubble or the housing market bubble or the crypto bubble or whatever it is. Like, pick whatever the thing is that you want to get your painful lesson from. And I think that consistently that's the only way that this can happen. And there are people that have a disposition like mine. Like, I have played about with small amounts of money, single-digit percents of my net worth, and the rest is in real estate and in the S&P, and that's it, right? Like, and I've spoken to, I don't know much about finance, but I've spoken to Morgan Housel a fucking ton, and I spoke to the guys that did Just Keep Buying. Who is that? Justin somebody. Anyway, wrote a great book. My point being, minimum viable strategy when it comes to looking at investment. There are a ton of people out there that will do that. The number of people that are always going to be susceptible to the other type of investment, I don't think is going to change.
That's very fair. I think you're absolutely right. And it's why we've seen so many iterations of the fake gurus in like 6 years, right? You had, first off, the fake guru courses. Then you had these automation services, YouTube automation. Then you've got crypto and NFTs. What's next? I don't know.
Have you
But either
seen...
way, I have a career out of it.
That is true. You have been able to call them out. So one of the interesting dynamics that I've seen is Do Kwon, Martin Shkreli, BitBoy, a bunch of other people. Every previous generation of villain has celebrated the now more in vogue foe of SBF being the current villain that everybody wants to have a crack at. Like, that's been so... It's like Martin Shkreli did a podcast a couple of days ago saying to Do Kwon, like, Do Kwon was on there with him, and Shkreli saying, jail's not that bad. And you're like, wow. Like, it's so fucking fascinating to see this, like, fucking Suicide Squad of...
You want to know why this stuff exists? What punishment did Martin Shkreli really have? And let me ask you an ethical question, one that's really tough. If you're 24 years old and you're smart enough to understand that you can make $10 million in 24 months, and the risk is reputational harm, you get slandered in the media, and you go to jail for 2 years. But you come out and you have all your little investments, you're smart enough to put your money elsewhere, so like people can't come after it. So when you get out of jail, you got it. I'm not saying I'd do it. I would never do that. However, there's enough people in this world that care more about money, and they'll make money at the expense of others, risk jail time, and in some cases serve jail time. But they know the way our system works is in 2 or 3 years, when you're out, you now have this like big persona, which Jordan Belfort has now been able to turn. If you go through the redemption arc, you now have massive audience already, and then if you just go through the redemption arc, you can actually capture like 80% of those people. So anyway, but then you come out and have a bunch of money. There's this guy named Bankman-Fried that I've gone after, and this guy like stole who knows how much, millions and millions of dollars. He scammed them from credit card fracking, I think is the word they use. He goes to jail and comes out and buys Lamborghinis. And so these guys, what a lot of people have figured out is that you commit all this fraud, white collar crime, of course. You serve 2 or 3 years in jail at worst, and it's not in county prison. And then you come out and you've got massive amounts of money stored away, and then you just live the rest of your life however you want. I hate it because I think that's ethically bankrupt. That's awful. However, enough people are willing to do this. What I'm getting at is if we lived in a system where these people their lives were ended the second they were convicted of this, how many times would we see this happen? My guess is it would reduce probably 90%.
But what you're looking for with the justice system is not vengeance, right? You're looking for justice.
Right.
People that have lost all of their money, they might want to see this person behind. I'm pretty sure that I saw SBF should get the death sentence was trending on Twitter earlier on.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to the extreme. I don't know my opinion on that, but like I'm going to the extreme to prove a point. Like for instance, if you drove after drinking one beer and you got caught, in the punishment is that you no longer have a YouTube channel, you can no longer put out content online, and you will serve 10 years in jail, and you are unable to have a woman visitor to have fun. As a guy, would you drink a beer and drive? I'd like to think that you would even after a beer, you would strongly consider asking for a ride or taking an Uber. Right now, I feel like the punishment for all these crimes is so minimal that the only thing we have is media. The only thing we have is like, how can we at least somewhat try and prevent this? Which is funny because that actually counters the entire argument, which is like, then what happens when the influencers influence you to be a part of the scheme, right? But anyway, we live in a system where I'm going through a lawsuit right now, and like the amount of money you spend on legal fees for something so minimal is just, it's so insane that we live in a clown world in a lot of ways. And it's very unfortunate. And I think that's why a lot of these schemes happen.
One of the interesting things you've got is how much somebody values money and how much somebody values perhaps their freedom or their time or their reputation or whatever it is. So a problem you encounter is when you have somebody who doesn't value their freedom or their time very much, but values money massively. Because for that person, going to jail for 5 years, for 10 years, for 10 mil would make complete sense. Whereas, if you'd say, would you go to jail for 10 years to get $10 million or $1 million? There would be a huge bunch of people that would say no. And what you have are differing levels of priorities. And what you need is like a fucking bespoke judicial system that works out how much pain a person is going to pay individually for that particular type of freedom that's being taken away from them. And yeah, I think that you're right. There are people out there for whom material wealth is so high up on their list of priorities that they would be prepared to pay pretty much any price in order to get $10 million. And for those people, 2 years in jail and an ankle tag for a little while doesn't feel like much. Yeah.
It's a fair trade-off.
Yeah, precisely.
And that's why a lot of fake gurus exist, by the way, is because they value your $1,000 for their course over customer satisfaction. The stuff that a lot of the real bad fake gurus do, it's very clear that they very much value the small amount of money they make per customer, the $1,000 or whatever. They don't care about the reputation. They don't care about screwing the person. They'll take the money and they'll never give a refund. That's how they're able to make their money. How do you stop it? You can't.
Another interesting element of all of this is the effective altruism movement. So this is a charity, a very advanced charity that looks to try and maximize the effectiveness of any money which is donated to it. A lot of people have heard online about the bloat and the sort of uselessness of many charities out there, that it's basically being spent on expenses and a bunch of other things, and it's just a marketing campaign that allows executives to live a nice life and doesn't really make much real world impact. Effective altruism is a part of long-termism, which was started by Will MacAskill, who's been on the show. Will's having a super bad time of it at the moment because Sam Bankman-Fried was the single largest donor to that. His plan was to donate almost all of the wealth that he generated. He was planning to earn to give, which is make as much money as is possible and give it all away to the most effective charities. The really fucking interesting question that needs to be asked is, from a utilitarian perspective, is it ethical to con people out of money in order to give that money to causes which are more worthy or would make better use of the money than the people that originally had it and donated it? Like, do the ends justify the means is a fucking, for me, and remembering that the EA movement is all about utilitarianism, rationalist perspective, all that stuff. That's a really fucking difficult question to answer.
Are humans even capable of answering this one? That's like so challenging, right? I think my mind immediately goes to, if there's victims in anything, you try to avoid it at all costs, right? So my mind goes there. So, okay, you just explained there is a victim. You take $1 from person A, you give $2 to person B, and somehow they're able to create a system where everyone benefits more, maybe at the expense of one, but 5 people are benefited. What's a really fascinating thought exercise for this is it's the Y train, where like if the train goes down one path, it takes away one person or whatever, and the other one's like 5 people, but it saves a kid or something. Yeah, it's like a moral dilemma that's so incredibly difficult to answer. That's so fascinating, man, because then I think the counter argument people can bring up is that's just how our system works. It's like in almost all scenarios, you're taking from someone and giving to others.
Dude, I have a friend.
That's capitalism to a T.
I have a friend who believes that everybody is someone's exit liquidity. Everyone is someone's exit liquidity. That's how he sees humanity.
Right.
I'm someone's exit liquidity, and so are you, and so is he, and so is the person that's watching.
Yeah, we buy real estate, right? We're the exit liquidity from the previous owner. They're
Everyone is someone's exit liquidity.
And made a bunch of money.
I mean, my intuition, like, obviously it's nice for me to put forward this sort of like semi-autistic argument about like, oh, well, what happens if you can do as much good with the money and stuff like that? It's like, no, you don't get to take people's fucking money. Like, no matter what it is that you're doing, it is that person's money. That's what property rights are. So no, you don't get to do that. Also, even if you just take a fucking utilitarian approach to it, loss aversion suggests that we get far greater pain from losing than pleasure from gaining. I'm not sure that if you take it to the absolute extreme of people dying and starving in Africa, there has to be a point at which that balances out. But no, you don't get to take people's fucking money for this stuff. However, the effective altruism community at the moment, which people kind of always had a bit of an axe to grind against, because it was a lot of smart people that had these long word ideas and this philosophy that was a little bit difficult to get a hold of, and it was a little bit of a gated community. It was kind of, it wasn't super accessible for most people, and there has been a lot of brewing resentment, I think, and this situation has given a vector of attack to all of those people. And it's not just EA that's come for it, right? It's been polyamory. So because a lot of the people in EA are non-monogamous as well, because it's forward-thinking San Francisco-y type people. And what else came for it as well? Like utilitarianism, rationalism, like all of these different things, any opportunity. And this is how you know that I think it's the problems with EA didn't exist within it. The problems are, it's just an opportunity for someone to really, really point their ire at that thing because there's now a justified weakness in it.
How about this? You also have Sam Bankman-Fried could argue in his mind, and he probably did, that money in my hands is better suited than money in other people's hands. And this is where it gets dangerous, right? Because then someone who's evil, it just goes, oh, I can handle the money better. And they take all the money, and then you go, oh, wait a second. One person was better off and 10 million people were worse off. Wait a second. How do we allow this to happen? Well, in his mind, he probably justifies his behavior as I could do better with the money. That's where it gets dangerous.
What was that Kanye West lyric about allowing one man to have all that power? That's the issue. Another interesting comparison would be between crypto exchanges now and banks in pre-1930s, before the FDIC was created in order to protect people's money. That's fucking interesting. And
bank runs are dangerous in any system, man.
Dude, I think moving forward, it would be super, super surprising if we don't see this being used by the government as an opportunity to increase scrutiny. You know, bringing it full circle back to is SBF actually secretly a part of the government trying to bring down crypto from the inside? Whether he is or isn't, the outcome on the other side of this has to be increased scrutiny. There is so much. I was going to say there is so much attention being paid to this, but there's only attention being paid to this on Twitter and on YouTube and on Reddit. Mainstream media, New York Times, hasn't had a single article about this. Why?
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Have you seen a single article from the New York Times about this at all? Let me see. I'm going to bring this up.
Might have taken a couple days. I don't know.
New York Times, what happened to FTX? Here's what to know. Embattled crypto exchange files for bankruptcy. FTX investigating possible hack. So this one's come out today. Who bears the blame for FTX's failure? Fucking interesting, man.
By the way, I'd be really interested to read that article and see if they even bring up YouTube influencers. I mean, think that's a pretty good argument for me, right? If the news article doesn't even bring up their name.
Well, that's only if you presume that the news article is the arbiter of everything that is just and appropriate in the world. Like, I think the New York Times investigative skills have been called into question, and their biases have also been called into question.
But yeah, my whole argument is just like, there's people way bigger than this that are way more to blame. That's kind of my point. It's like all the media attention is probably going to go to the big players, and if they don't even bring up the crypto influencers, here's another thing: is like the FTX had, billions in assets. I would love to find out who influenced, like if there was any way to find out who influenced the most, right? I mean, that's not fun because then you're going to look at someone and go like, you influenced the most losses. But like theoretically, if you could just clap your hands and have data to anything you want in this world, if you're like, give me, people's minds and who influenced, like who got someone to open up their phone and download the app. Was it watching Tom Brady? Was it some ad on TV? Was it just some generic ad of FTX and like, okay, my buddy said something? Who influenced the most? And I would love to know, and unfortunately we won't know, I would love to know if we had that number, would people react to my video the same, right? If you found out that you brought Tom Nash, like our buddy Tom Nash, if he influenced literally $0, but he's getting all of this pushback, like if his customers literally lost $0, but yet he's getting all this pushback, is that fair, right? Because if there were no damages, where's the problem?
Is there not a problem if somebody tries to promote an unethical product and the only reason that nobody loses money is because of a failure of conversion?
Oh, yeah. Well, again, it goes back to like, did you know, right? If you were knowingly promoted like some really, really, really bad product with, terrible customer reviews, then yeah, you're at fault no matter what, whether people sign up or not. That just makes you a scumbag. But yeah,
I also think
know,
the way that the New York Times is going to do this with, you were saying about how if the New York Times brings up the YouTube influencers, then maybe that gives a little bit more legitimacy to the fact that they were a little bit culpable for this. The New York Times will hopefully look at the Tom Brady's, the Stephen Curry's of the world, right? But if they just look at the big players, who would hold accountable the small players? It's like New York Times is the domain of normal media. Like it's what our parents read, right? YouTube is what we watch. You have partitioned off the battlegrounds and the accountability into the appropriate audiences as is supposed to be done. And I think that was the argument that we came back to earlier on, right? That, this happened on YouTube, therefore it's held accountable on YouTube.
On YouTube, go at YouTubers. On YouTube, go at YouTubers, 100%. As you should. You shouldn't put Tom Brady in the title. You should put people who are on YouTube. I get it. It's the game. But it would also be a little disingenuous, by the way, to be fair, for the New York Times to not at least consider all the people that promoted it on social media. Social media is so much a part of it. So that would actually be, I'd argue against my own position that it is not good journalism on their part to not at least consider maybe did FTX come from YouTube or Instagram? Like were people looking at for it? So let me look it up. And if they looked up FTX now, they'd be able to very quickly find out that there's drama and they'd be able to figure that out. So that'd actually be a fascinating argument against my own position that maybe both sides are doing.
You want conversion tracking across everything, and then you can just distribute hate appropriately.
Yeah, it kind of sucks when your brain works the way mine does, where it's I don't relate to outrage. I don't experience that when something big happens. I don't turn to emotions. I immediately start looking for all solutions or all like, let me break down like what actually happened, especially nowadays in the media. You never know the real story. And so whenever something happens, I go, okay, let me sit back and assess everything. Let me look into every little detail. I don't have this like outrage response that I feel like a lot of people do, or at least in the comment section they do.
Welcome to YouTube, man. Look, Spencer, Cornelia, ladies and gentlemen, if people want to check out more of the stuff that you do, where should they go? YouTube, Spencer, Cornelia. I hope you like my videos. If you do, great. Join the crowd. If you don't, that's cool too. Join that crowd. Spencer, there's a crowd for both. I appreciate you. Thanks, man. What's happening, people? Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that episode, then press here for a selection of the best clips from the podcast over the last few weeks. And don't forget to subscribe. Peace.